welcome to Paperback Flicks.
I'm Ruth Craddock, and this is.
Ray Davidson.
hmm Welcome back to another Paperback Flicks. This is episode 2 of season 3, and we are talking about How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the book and the 3 separate movie adaptations. When did you first read it?
So probably back when I was a little kid, Dr. Seuss has always been a big thing in my house, in my kid, like in our house now with the kids.
hmm
So I've known this book and the whatever the 60s
Yeah,
cartoon.
nineteen sixty
Yeah,
six movie.
like all of my life.
hmm
So I'm guessing it's the same with you.
yes, yes. I can't remember the first time I read it. I just know always knowing of this poem and the story. And I did grow up with the cartoon. And I guess I didn't realize when I was younger that it was Boris Karloff that was the
Mhm.
narrator.
And the Grinch.
What was it like to read it this time? Did you read it again?
Yeah. So I did read it again. I read it to all of my kids like when they were little, but I haven't read Dr. Seuss in years.
hmm
And I kind of forget, like there's some of them that are like iconic and they stick with me forever. Fox and Socks. Like I can usually like rattle off pieces of Fox and Socks or whatever.
hmm
But How the Grinch Stole Christmas is one of those, it's so iconic and it's so everywhere. It's kind of saturated into our um
Culture.
culture, yeah, to
hmm
the point that like you'll say something and you'll not even realize that it's from that, like calling my kids because all my kids are blonde, and so when they were little and they would come get out of bed or whatever, I'm like, Cindy Lou Who is up, like you just reference it all the time,
hmm
and I forget that that's where it comes from until I read the book again, and I'm like, ah,
Oh
you
yeah.
know. But also I have a couple of those, oh, what's it called? When you remember some people say it about the Berenstain Bears all the time, the way that we remember the Berenstain Bears being written is actually not like how the
Yeah.
name is spelled.
That's the
And
weird phenomenon where like your memory is completely different than what actually happened, but
right,
you totally would swear that that's how it was.
right. I think it's called the Mandela effect, but I don't know
Okay.
if I'm saying the right thing.
I
But anyway,
think you're right. We'll find out and we'll put it up there.
yes. But I
Yeah.
have that with this story because I have seen the other things, the other video movies, or just I don't know, you just like pull things in. There's other Dr. Seuss material that will sometimes reference Who's or whatever, to where I will remember something that I'm like, isn't that in the book? Like pieces of the cartoon maybe that I'm like, yeah, from the story that are actually not in the book.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that was not part of this.
Yeah, so that's one of the things my son asked me when we were watching um the Illumination 3D animated one, the
Mhm.
2018 one. Like were they in a snowflake in the book? And I'm like, I don't remember. So at that point I hadn't reread the book. I read the book last.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, I don't remember, but it turns out they're not. I
Right.
think somebody just decided to take that from the whole Horton Hears a Who thing, and they
Right.
were a speck of dust on a clover. So I was like, so the speck of dust that was a part of the snowflake, and later it melted and landed on a clover.
Or maybe all the tiny things have little Who villages and we don't know about
There's all these different Whovilles.
it.
So, like, the Whovilles of Horton Hears a Who are not the same Whovillians of the Grinch, or
Yeah, maybe. They do look slightly different in the drawings. So maybe, I don't know. But
maybe
yeah, like
their
I
towns are
like,
similar.
yeah, it's true. I liked that concept, but you're right, it's not in the book. And there's some lines from the poem in the other movies that are also not in the book, or like they don't stand out or whatever. And so I'm like, oh, I actually really like that concept, but it wasn't part of the original story.
hmm Yeah, so
But
like, of course, with adaptations, there was going to be some like adapting. There's going to
Right.
be some embellishing, and sometimes it's good. Sometimes it like helps amplify the story and it makes it even better. And other times it's kind of like, why?
Right.
It feels like it takes away.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love the poem. Always have. So, like you're talking about how it's sort of just a part of our culture. It's so much a part of our culture that at my kids' elementary, not only do they have Santa at like the Christmas festival things they do, but they also have the Grinch that you can take pictures with. So they've done this every year we've been here. So I'm like, yeah, he's that big of an presence that he's almost as important as Santa Claus now.
Right.
So it's definitely iconic and has its rightful place in Christmas history.
Yep. And as it happens, he's my favorite character archetype. I like the people who are either villains or have every opportunity to be villains and choose better. I like it when it's a bit of a redemption story and
Mhm.
they were going down this way and they choose better. And so the fact that that is like one of the number one like Christmas stories that's not like baby Jesus, but it's like a secular Christmas story, but it still has that redemption quality to it. I
Hmm.
love it. I love that that's what we've grabbed a hold of.
Okay, so let's talk in order of the movies.
Okay?
So 1966, 2D animated film. Um, we grew up with this, so it's very iconic. And then there's the song that said,
Yes.
"Your meat one, Mr. Grinch."
And while I do think that that song was iconic already, I think that Home Alone made it like the song of Christmas. You know what I mean? Like,
It helped,
yeah.
definitely.
Like I always had heard the song, I always knew the song, but then when we saw it on Home Alone and like we were like, I know that, I'm like, I don't
Hmm.
know, as maybe our kids don't do it now, but Home Alone was a new movie while I was not an adult. I don't remember
Yeah,
at
we
what
were we
point.
were children when they came out. I remember
Right.
the year they came out, we saw them back to back.
Yeah.
I think the first and second one were released really close to each other.
Really close together. Yeah. And it's kind of one of those, like the first time that you recognize an actor and you go, that's the guy from whatever, Harry Potter, the
Hmm.
first time you recognize an actor and you can hail back to what it was. For me and for my siblings, that was one of those th like one of the first times that we were watching this movie, but we recognized that movie,
Yeah.
from the song. And so it just became a thing. And then my husband, I've talked about how my husband likes to do parodies. He'll sing parodies about anything. And usually he includes chickens. Like,
Includes chickens?
yes, like you're a nasty little chicken. Like, I don't know.
That's
It's
interesting.
always
I like to throw monkeys into things for some reason. I like the word monkey. I like to be like, my kids are listing something, I'll be like, monkey brains, and sometimes I'll be like, zebras, antelopes, monkeys, like just to mess them up because I'm weird.
but yeah, anytime there's anything that's like, oh, what's the smell in here? And like Scott will start singing some version of you're a nasty Mr. Grinch, but it's always whatever is the smell or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay, that's funny. Well, you're talking about Home Alone. That movie also sort of like solidified the song, Jingle Bell Rock.
oh, uh-huh.
Rock, yeah. That song, I can't hear that song and not associate it with Home Alone. What are your thoughts in general of the cartoon other than the iconicness of the songs and stuff?
Yeah. So I love it. It's so sweet. It does just keep along with the book. It puts its own like when he's like talking about the different instruments, and so it gives them a little bit of time to like play the instruments. Like it gives it a
Mhm.
little bit extra, but like it's a short. It's a little movie.
Yeah.
I don't remember how long it is, but not long. Like long enough that none of my kids got up during the movie. And when it was over, they were like,
Oh,
"Oh."
it's over. That's short even for us.
But yeah, and also it has we never have roast beef anymore. We have roast beast.
Yep.
and not necessarily from the book, but it's from the narr what did we just say his name was Karloff? But how he's at the in the way that he's like the Grinch, he himself carved the roast beast or whatever it is.
The
And
rare who roast beast.
yeah, the way that he says it for whatever reason, like the girls like took that and like that's a thing now. Like now we only have roast beast, like I
Yeah.
love that guy's voice anyway.
Yeah,
But the fact that it like became that I again that iconic thing in their head that like that stuck with them. So we have roast beast now, but you
that's
have to say it like
exactly.
him. You have to say it like the narrator.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, I love that movie. It's very iconic imagery, all the different ways in which he dismantles Christmas are fun. Like, and what I like is the ways in which the live action Jim Carrey movie um sort of borrows from that and then expands upon it. They do some
Hmm.
of the things that he did in the cartoon and then move on. But I don't know, it's a fun cartoon, and I've always been a fan of 2D. I will always appreciate 2D. I know some people get kind of weird about, computer animation and 3D and blah blah blah, and like how somehow it's better. I'm like, it's not better. It's just another art form. It's just another
Right.
style. And there's a lot of work that goes into both styles. It's and it takes I feel like it takes a different type of animator to make each type.
Yeah.
And anyways, I don't know. I like the 2D world, obviously, um,
Mhm.
because of just there's a little whimsy to it. Anyway, so are we agreeing? We like the cartoon?
I love it. It's so much more simple than for some reason because it's so iconic, I expected it to be like this like masterwork and it's just really simple and short and sweet and but I actually think that that might be why we were able to like kind of hold it in our hearts because there wasn't so much to digest.
Your feelings about live action? Go.
I thought that I did not like this movie because the first time I saw it, I don't know, Jim Carrey, it's usually not my bag.
Really? Oh,
Yeah, and then I rewatched it
I
and I'm
did not know
like,
that about you.
yeah, I don't know. I've never been big on Jim Carrey.
I guess
I don't
we've
know.
never brought this conversation up before. We've never been like, "Do you like Jim Carrey?"
Right.
Part of
It's
our
never
relationship. I did.
never been
Guess
a
we weren't
thing.
there.
But then when I did rewatch it for like I probably would never have rewatched it just because in my mind I'd already decided that I watched it once, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And then I rewatched it for this and I was like, you know what? Actually, I don't dislike it. Like there are actually elements of it that I actually do really like. And this might be the perfect fit for Carrie's type of humor.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
hated Ace Ventura. I didn't like The Mask. I
Yeah. The
don't
mask is
really,
very over the top.
yeah. I don't really even love The Truman Show. I know I'm supposed to like The Truman Show. And everybody thinks like, oh, well, if
Everybody
you
has
want,
to? I didn't know.
yeah, like people like I don't know, whenever the few times that I have mentioned, oh, I don't really like Jim Carrey's stuff, and they're like, right, but the Truman Show, that's something that you can appreciate. I don't like it. But when I rewatched this just recently, I'm like, oh, actually, I like this one. I surprised myself.
Sometimes
But
movies, they're better the more you watch it, especially like when there's a lot of time in between the first time you watch it and the next time. Like
yeah,
there's things you remembered being in the movie or that you not liking in the movie that really weren't as bad as you initially thought they were. And I don't
yeah,
know if it's just because like seeing it again makes it less annoying or if it just makes it like you see like the positives of it or something.
yeah. And I honestly, I think for myself personally, part of like I might appreciate it more because he is genuinely acting and he can be genuinely funny. And yes, he's hamming it up and he's over the top and whatever.
Hmm.
However, now the crap that my kids watch half the time, like they're like watching some stupid thing on YouTube or whatever
Mhm.
that they're
Yeah.
like, I'm like, this is legitimately not fun. I would rather watch Ace Ventura over this. Like,
Yeah, like
you know?
that's quality compared to what you're watching.
Yeah. And so when
Yeah.
I rewatched this, I'm like, oh, actually, that was really clever. Oh, that was pretty funny. Another actor would not have done that as well as he did that, you know?
Mhm.
And I was like, the more we went along, the more I'm like, I think I might kind of like this movie. So
Yeah,
great.
I've always been a Jim Carrey fan, since his In Living Color days, the old TV sketch show, by the Wayans brothers. And I just thought he was amazing and he was just so funny. And I've always loved how he just commits. Like whatever he's doing, he goes for it. Like
Yeah,
there's no holding back. You don't see him like doubting his choices.
right,
Like, because sometimes you can see when somebody's not 100% there in a part, or like they're not committed to whatever silly thing is happening. You
right.
never see that with Jim Carrey. I don't think I've ever seen him not go there in whatever it is he's doing, whether it's totally crazy, over the top, insane, Ace Ventura, or it's like regular, normal person acting,
Right.
like The Majestic. Like,
Yeah, or Liar Liar.
there.
That's another one where I like him in that one. And I felt like there was kind of more of that acting going on in the Grinch world in this
Hmm.
movie, which I can appreciate, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Because the Grinch, like they really open up like his backstory and why he is the way he is and
Hmm.
stuff that's not at all in the book,
Yeah.
but they really dive in and I could see that kid being this grown up. You know what I mean? And so I was like, and they told the story without like preaching to you.
Hmm.
And so I was like, yeah, okay, I'm in. I like this, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know another actor would have done the part justice now that I have seen him do it.
Well, like, I want to do a comparison to another Dr. Seuss live action movie, adaptation, The Cat in the Hat. Now,
Hmm.
I am a big Mike Myers fan. I love
Hmm.
him, but
Me
there are
too.
times when he's not funny. And there's times when it doesn't work. And like I've watched the Cat in the Hat movie enough times now because my kids watched it a bunch, that like I don't hate it as much as I originally did, but
Hmm.
it's nowhere near the level of performance of
Yeah.
Jim Carrey in The Grinch
Yeah.
movie. Because like I don't know, I love Mike Myers, but I don't know what it is about the Cat in the Hat. Maybe it's like some of the inappropriate jokes in it. I don't know. Maybe it's the
Yeah.
kid characters. I mean, I like Dakota Fanning generally, but I don't even like her in this movie. And I mean, I'm over it. It's not as nauseating as it was the first time I saw it. But like, I love the set design and the art direction of that movie though.
Mhm.
I love green. And the movie has a lot of green and like all the crazy stuff in like the houses and the way everything's all they're trying to do the whole like Dr. Seuss like aesthetics. So
Right.
everything has kind of a whimsical or very interesting vibe about it. So I love that. That's my favorite thing about the Cat in the Hat movie is the art direction. Love it. Um, but yeah, anyway, so that's just an example of another movie, another Dr. Seuss movie with another comedian, really funny comedian, but where they didn't quite work.
So there's something I've mentioned it before, but there's something to the concept when you have like too many tens in a film.
Okay.
Excellent, based off of an excellent children's author, right? Dr.
Hmm.
Seuss, loved around the world. It's an excellent little story, and you've got an excellent actor, a series of excellent actors, and a potentially famous director, and blah, blah, blah. There's too many tens,
Hmm.
and they kind of lean on that, and it turns out not great.
It sort
In
of
the case,
flops over.
yeah, in the case of The Grinch, I feel like that didn't happen. The it's got the same thing. It's got the same Dr. Seuss iconic, beloved, you know, quality basic story. It's
Hmm.
got a huge actor. It's at several big. The girl, I don't know how quickly I'll find it, but the girl, do you remember her name? The actress?
It will appear right here.
Yeah.
Anyways, yes. So play Cindy Lou Who that you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Carrie, I don't know. Anyway, I can't find it right now because, of course, I wrote pages of, oh, it doesn't show up. I wrote pages of notes. Show up. And I
Yeah.
can't find where I went.
Invisible notes, which is very helpful.
Yes. Washed out notes. But anyway, but she's actually, I guess, a famous singer. I use the word famous, not actually knowing anything
Yeah,
else
like
that she
I
does.
heard that she was like a famous singer now, and I was like, well, she's not that famous because I haven't heard of her. And like
Right,
I saw images of her grown up, and I'm like, yep, never seen her as a grown up. So
right.
I mean, I'm
That's
glad
what,
she's famous somewhere, but she's not like so famous that we all know who she is.
right. That's what I did too.
But I'm like,
But
good for her.
and then until right now I could have told you her name that plays the love interest.
Oh yes, okay. So of course I'm not gonna remember either. But yeah, she's a comics genius, and she's in like a lot of the Christopher Guest movies. She's movies with him a lot, and not
She is
like
so
those the Mighty Winds and the
yeah.
Waiting for
She's
Guffmans and those kind of things.
she's Leonard's mom in The Big Bang Theory.
Yep, there you go.
But yeah, just she's done a lot and she is so I think she's hilarious. Oh, she's the stepmother in Into the Woods.
Oh yes, that's right. She was.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's great.
So yeah, I think she's so funny and I do think that she's really pretty. One of my daughters like they were like she's kind of weird looking, but she's pretty for a who, I guess. I'm like she is not weird looking. That woman is gorgeous. And I think what they considered weird looking was the fact that she was old. She
Oh,
was she was
okay.
not the young 20 something love interest
Person.
that they're used to
Yeah,
seeing because
yeah.
they're used to things like High School Musical or whatever, like like
Hmm.
much younger
It's an
people.
old beauty. Well,
Right.
that and like the Hughes will have like kind of like an interesting extra little rounded tip on their nose.
Yeah.
And they even make like a mention that Cindy Lou hasn't even grown into her nose yet because she has
Right.
a normal like human looking nose.
Yeah.
I think they even put that on her, Martha
Yeah.
May. That's
Yeah.
the character's name.
Yeah.
So like, but she looks good that way. Like it looks natural on her.
Yeah.
There's some other characters like Cindy Lou's dad for some reason. He looks really weird with that
Yeah.
extra nose thing.
And
Like,
her
yeah,
mom who's also is that Molly
I
Shannon?
knew the Molly Shannon.
Yeah. Okay.
Molly Shannon.
I thought that and then I'm like leave it to me to say the wrong name, but I'm gonna put it out there anyway.
You made me forget for a second, but then I found it. So we're good.
Yeah. But yeah, like she's just so cute and quirky anyway that like having the nose, you're like, oh, okay, sure. Like,
Yeah,
but
it works. I love
again,
her weird like Christmas light obsession and
yeah,
like the random thing she does. She's like, honey, can you get that light out of the refrigerator? Somehow I missed that. And it's like, oh,
right.
and then later when they're inside the house, they have candles when like the Grinch calls them, prank calls them. And you're like, yep, mm-hmm. She's that obsessed. And then she steals a street light later. And she's like, oh, look at this wonderful light I found for my Christmas display. And then you hear like crashing. And they're like, what's that? Like, oh, we'll just go. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I thought that was really funny because I get that. One, I think Molly Shannon's pretty funny.
Mhm.
Two, I'm into decorating a lot. So I understand this obsession to be like, you got to have the best decorations. And like the thing with Christmas decorations is, okay, so not everybody celebrates Halloween. And there's a lot of people in my neighborhood that do. So I appreciate that as a Halloween person. Um, but it seems like far more people celebrate Christmas or in some
Mhm.
sense, whether they believe in Jesus Christ or Santa Claus, they celebrate the
Yeah.
winter season in some way.
Yeah.
When they have either a Christmas tree or they have the lights, a lot of people have lights.
Yeah.
So there's almost like a sense of almost competition with your
Mhm.
neighbors when
Yeah.
you're doing Christmas lights and outdoor Christmas decorations. And like, it's silly. especially when you start to realize how expensive all this stuff is. Like the nicer and nicer like display things that get more and more expensive.
So on that note, my husband is the who mom of our house.
Yeah.
He just installed the permanent lights, right? So
Oh, okay.
they're permanent lights, but you can
In
change all
the soffit, like underneath, like the edge of the roof,
the,
and you can
Yep.
program them. Yeah.
You
Okay.
can program them. You can set them to music so that they just like respond to the music and they'll just like doo, doo, doo,
Nice.
doo, doo. Ridiculous. But that does not stop him from, those like black bins at like Home Depot or whatever that have the yellow lids?
Mm-hmm.
We have four of them. And at least two of them are completely dedicated to lights.
Wow.
They are
Nice.
all they are all out there. Well, he also decorates like my parents' house because they're not going to. They're like, whatever, we don't need lights. And he's like, oh, I'll be there.
He's
But
spreading the Christmas cheer for everyone.
yes,
Like
but he
nobody
is
in my family is not gonna have Christmas lights.
correct. He's done that for neighbors too. We had a neighbor that was in a wheelchair and he's like, I got you, girl.
Sweet though. That's really nice.
But
That's
he
nice.
he just
What a cute
wants
obsession.
I
A
of all
sweet
the
obsession.
options he could have, fine. There's actually, you can't see it right now, but most of my house is lit in either rope lights or Christmas light, the small like fairy light
Yeah.
size. And in my backyard all year round, there is the outdoor, they almost look like they would be the cafe lights, except they're the smaller Christmas ones.
Oh, okay.
But that lights my backyard. Like we
Okay.
have them every single bedroom, this office, the kitchen,
Wow.
everywhere.
Yeah. We have them
He's
on the tree on the inside of the house, and that's about it. I don't put them anywhere else, really. Like, I put them in the windows in like the kids'
Yeah.
bedrooms, so they're
We
kind of
have,
outlined. But
I don't know if you've seen them, but the curtain lights,
oh yeah, I've seen those. Those are cool.
yeah, we have those
Oh wow.
on. Well, right now they're only on the windows in the front of the house, but we
Oh,
have enough for all of the windows of the house.
nice.
It's a thing. But yeah,
It is.
so
It's a thing.
so
So
when we were watching this, I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's Scott."
it's Scott in Who form.
Yep.
And I've always liked this movie. I will say that I like it more every time I watch it. Of course, I am a Jim Carrey fan. I love that he goes there. I love
Hmm.
his brand of silly. I think there's rarely been anything that he's done where I didn't like it. Right now, I'm having a hard time imagining or remembering anything he's done that I really didn't like. Especially when it was comedy. Like
Hmm.
I, I totally go there with him for his comedy. Some of the things that he did, they're very Jim Carrey like things that
Yes.
he were sort of thrown in for the character. That I'm pretty sure were probably improv things that he did.
Yeah.
Like one of them I can think of is the whole thing where like he's trying to find something to wear and he pulls the tablecloth out from underneath like all the stuff on the table and then he walks off and he comes back and then like knocks it all over and like kicks the table because it
So
didn't
it does
fall
it
over. Like he actually got it.
perfectly. Yeah.
Like you look like he's just gonna walk away and then comes back and knocks all over and you're like, so for some reason that's hilarious. It's just really funny.
That actually did make me laugh out loud when we watched it. I had no recollection of that being there. And so when he does it, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then he goes back and, and he messes up the table. I was actually like laughing hard at that. I was like, okay, you win. That was really funny.
Yeah.
But
Like,
you're talking about him committing and him just going there. So I was watching an interview that probably a lot of people have seen by now because this is not a new thing.
hmm
And they were actually talking about how he manifests, like he likes to manifest his own destiny. And so he like writing the whatever it was, $10 million
writing a
dollar
million
check.
dollar check to himself.
Yeah. So like he was talking about that kind of thing, but he's like for the Grinch, he actually had to manifest and he was like talking to therapists and he actually spoke with a guy that I thought this was a joke. It turns out it's not a joke. He was not joking about this. That he had to speak to a PTSD therapist,
Interesting.
like someone that specializes in that. because of the costume.
Oh,
Apparently, this costume was extremely hot,
yeah.
extremely unpleasant, like it was scratchy, and the hair, like in order to
Uncomfortable.
make it look real,
Really,
it
the contacts were really uncomfortable
yeah,
too.
like the hair was also on the inside, like
Oh gosh.
a fair way, like how you'll have facing. The facing was the hair, like to make
Really?
sure that it never, like if it moved at all, then it looked like his hair bunched. It didn't look
Oh,
like
yeah. Okay.
cloth, you
Okay.
know.
Yeah. I can
But
see that.
he's like 9 hours of
That.
all this on and just being miserable. And then he had to shoot for the day.
Yeah.
And then the next morning it was 9 hours of the
And there's
same.
the whole process of getting the makeup and costume on.
Yeah,
When they do these like fantastical prosthetics and like all this makeup, it people forget that it takes like hours sometime to
right.
do these things every
Because
day. Every time they go in to do that part, they have to sit down for how many hours to get all
yep,
the stuff on.
yep.
You know,
Because
it's
for
just
us,
like,
like
whoa.
by the time we have like the Grinch costume that you're taking pictures with at your kid's school, it's like a mascot outfit. Like it's,
Yeah,
you know what I
it's
mean?
it's a much simpler version. It's not like the nightmare that he's dealing with.
It impressed me and I like that like I do kind of forget about that. I forget that just how much sometimes goes into because I had the the dream at a point to become like a performer.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
you've done plays. You've
I'd done plays. I did a couple little commercials and things,
hmm
and I, like actually looked at going to Chapman University because it was going to be my big, open the doors kind of a situation. And I didn't. I stayed home and got married and had a bunch of kids instead, and I'm happy with that.
That's great too.
Yeah, I actually am quite happy with how my life has turned out. But
That was
there
the other
was a
plan.
yeah, there was a time that I was kind of looking into like potentially treading that path, and I understood that I may not ever make it. I may be one of those background Whoville people and being like, you see me for 7 seconds, two different parts, like
Yeah.
I was fully aware that I was probably going to end up being one of those kind of actors, but that was something that I was considering. And I forget sometimes that like even they have to sit for hours in the makeup chair for
hmm
7 seconds spread across two different scenes. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like they
hmm
go through a lot.
It's a
And
lot. It's a big process making a movie.
yeah,
And like it's been funny like making the Halloween shorts with my kids, having to explain to my younger children, it's okay if you don't get it right. We're supposed to do multiple takes. My youngest son is a perfectionist, and like he had the hardest time with anybody getting their lines wrong. Then he would be like, "Oh, come on!" I'm like, "No, it's okay, honey. You can do as many takes as we need. That's fine. You're practicing. It's okay." But like, that's the reality. When you're
yeah,
filming, there's a lot of takes, and
yeah.
like some of these crazy things you see people do in movies, they had to do over and over and over and over again. So like right now, I'm thinking about like the jubilation, and he was doing like there was a fudge judge and like the pudding and like all the different food things they were shoving in his mouth. I don't know how many times they had to do that, but they had to do that multiple times, I'm sure, just
He
to get
had to
all
have
of the
a
things.
spit bucket. Like I'm sure it had to be like,
Oh yeah.
like
I
he
do
had
love
to
that one
spit.
line that I always loved is when one guy's like, this is not pudding. And he's like, what is it? It's supposed to be pudding, but he's like, this is not pudding. It's like after he puts it in his mouth, he's like, what is it? That always cracked me up. I was like, that's funny. Um, so yeah, it's a lot of work to wear the costume. Like acting in general is a lot of work
Mhm.
without elaborate costumes and elaborate choreography or
Right.
fight sequences. Like it's difficult on its own, but then you add that extra layer. And the fact that he could wear that horrible outfit that would be that uncomfortable and like I've worn colored contacts before and they're not fun. I
Hmm.
did it for like I dressed as Morna from my book for
Mhm.
Comic-Con where I was selling books in my booth. And like, yeah, it was cool to have the yellow eyes, but one, I didn't have the prescription ones, so I couldn't really see. And I have bad eyesight. Um, and they just felt so awkward. I guess there's ones that are higher quality that don't feel so weird, but something about you're just very aware of them.
Yeah.
Not like you are with regular contacts. Regular contacts, you forget they're there. They just
Right.
kind of become part of your eyes. So I could only the fact that he could do that level, the same level of like goofy and like all in that he does regularly, he
Hmm.
still did with all that uncomfortable stuff and all hot and that many hours. That's insane. That
Yeah.
is very impressive. And he did a good job at it. That's that, I don't know, that deserves respect. Right.
Right. Yep. No, I totally agree. Like the as much as I at the beginning of talking about this movie, and my first comment is, his shtick is not really my thing. And that is true. Like sometimes he's just too much. But the fact that he can do it, the fact that he is still like working at 100%, like his not 100% is more than most of us put into anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I gotta hand it to him. Like fully deserves to be that A-list actor,
Yeah.
like oh
He
yeah,
definitely has the talent and he has the skill and he has the patience.
right.
And he delivers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have always liked this movie. I love him as the Grinch. Um, I know my husband doesn't like the whole background, the backstory. It's like I don't need a backstory. He's just the Grinch. Like, and I guess that's fine. Like, you didn't need it in the original story, but
Yeah.
it when you're gonna make it into like a full length film, yeah, you're gonna add a backstory, and it makes
Right.
sense, And the live action and the 3D animated movie both give him a backstory of sorts,
Right.
And like I do like the backstory. The one thing about the backstory that I think is kind of weird is that one, he ran away when he was 8, and nobody went to look for him. And it's not like they didn't know where he was. They all know he lives up in that cave in the mountain. So,
Right.
like, I would have bought it more if he was a teenager when he ran away, not an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
Like, and like, how bad of parents are these old biddies that they couldn't be like, call the police and be like, hey, our little Grinch boy ran off and he's only 8. Can you go get him? He's up in the mountain by himself. No one's gonna leave an 8-year-old alone to fend for themselves. And
Especially
like
when he comes
somehow
back
by
and they're like,
himself he built that whole cave.
yeah.
Like that's
Like
impressive, but what?
when he comes back, like I guess they make it look like that's where like the trash all gets sent up there.
Yeah,
So
it
he
gets
like
sucked up there.
converted the dump into a home or something. I don't know, I don't get it.
Something like
But
that.
like when he comes back and they're all like, "Oh, our Grinch," the two little old ladies, they're like, "Oh, our sweet little boy," and I'm like, "For you," you know
Like
what I mean? Like if they loved him so much and they're
you
just so
cared that
happy to see
much.
him
Why didn't you
again.
do anything?
Where were you
Maybe
for the
they're
last
just too
40
old
years?
and senile or something. But I love he's like, oh, you're still living? Like he's so surprised they're still alive. Like he hasn't once gone to check on him. Anytime
Right.
he's gone down there, he just assumed they were dead, I guess. And they were dead to him anyways. I don't know. That brings up another thing that I think is interesting when they're telling the backstory. So clearly the Grinch is the same age as Martha May and the mayor. So he
Hmm.
went to school with them. But like maybe I was wrong, but I could have sworn they showed in that flashback when the babies are all floating down the baskets down into Whoville, because that's apparently how babies are born in Whoville. They float down from heaven in baskets.
Right.
And kind of a different take on the stork story. Um, they showed a baby drop at um, Cindy Lou's parents' house. And like the dad came out and said, hey, our baby's here. It looks just like your boss. So that's confusing because even if that's Cindy's oldest brother, he's a teenager.
Right.
And he was born the same time. I swear it was the same guy. They're like, oh, my kid's like, no, no, I think it's somebody else. I'm like, that sounded like her dad. Like it looked like her dad. I don't know. I was just confused. It's like
Yeah.
as far as like how long he's actually been there. But then in the poem, he actually says he's 53 years old.
Right.
So he's not a young man, and he's not like crazy old, but he's been around for a while.
Right.
So it makes sense that he would think that those guys were dead, for one. And two, I like that because he has more of he doesn't have the teenage angst to him, and he doesn't have like the middle, like he's a little past middle aged or almost middle aged, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
And like he just has a more mature grumpiness,
Right.
a mature angsty. I've been putting up with this for so many years and I've just had it.
Right.
And I like that. I like that he's not in his 30s. I like that he's in his 50s. That just makes him feel more mature even when he's doing immature things. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I like the backstory. I like that they show the story in a lot of ways through Cindy Lou's perspective because she's trying to come to grips with Christmas,
Hmm.
what it all means. And she sees everybody just being crazy and she doesn't quite get it. She's like, "Well, what's the point of Christmas? Like what's going on here?" And so I appreciate that like they use that to one give Cindy Lou more of a character and more of like a story arc, but also it gives you a reason for why we're looking into the background of the Grinch,
Yeah.
why we find out his backstory. It's not just him sitting there thinking about his backstory. It's, she's actively investigating it. And I love that. It just made it more interesting and it made it feel natural, but it was still focused on the Grinch.
Right.
Even though she's still a more important character in the story now, she's still focusing her energy on the Grinch. So we're
Yeah.
still focused on the Grinch. It's still about the Grinch.
They do age her up for that
Yeah, so
because
she's
in the,
2 in the
yeah,
cartoon, and I don't see a 2-year-old doing these things.
right. No, she's at least 8 or 9. I feel like she's closer to like 12. But
Yeah, it's
like,
just somewhere between 8 and 12.
yeah,
'Cause some 12-year-olds are tiny. So,
yeah. But I feel like they kind of needed to do that to make her part of the story. Like it wouldn't make sense for a 2-year-old to be like, oh, whatever. I don't
yeah,
know.
it would be very
Oh,
interesting. So, I appreciate that they aged her up.
yeah.
I like
But
that.
yeah, I liked this might be silly and cheesy, but I like if you're going to expand on something and you give him a love interest or whatever, like I like that. I think it's sweet. It kind of speaks to the humans may not feel like in his situation, he's not a human, he's a who, but still,
He's a
the
what?
other who's weren't worth it. Do you know
He's
what
a
I
what,
mean?
though? Because she's
He's a
like,
what? That's
but
true.
that's what her dad says. She's like, he's a what?
A what?
Exactly. A
Yeah.
what? Who doesn't like Christmas?
Right. They're who's and he's a what.
He's a
But
what?
yeah,
There you go.
but still, like the concept that like the people were not really worth like they didn't feel like he was worth investing in. He didn't feel like they were worth investing in, but she was worth it. Cindy Lou went out of her way to make him see that he was worth her time and she
Mm-hmm.
became worth his. And you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that concept still like spread over all of it to
Mhm.
where I feel like if we were going to get the Dr. Seuss's Grinch backstory or a deeper story, like a more complete story, that would be included. That the human element, if you will, of family and relationships and
Mm-hmm.
people that are worth your living for or worth your time and worth investing in.
Yeah.
That's kind of it. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the spirit of Christmas. Like you said, like whether it's Jesus or whether it's Xmas, right? The Christmas, the more secular, the concept that you were worth me thinking about what can I give you?
Yeah. It's
You
going out of
know,
my way to make you feel special.
yeah, because everyone needs to have a kid in their life, whether it's your child or it's your niece or nephew or it's the random neighbor's kid who bugs you but always shows up, or whatever. Like
Hmm.
everybody needs that element in their life. Everybody needs
That childlike energy, that
yeah,
innocence.
Yeah.
I think a lot of ways Christmas really represents that sense of belief and faith and the innocence of a child.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love we talked about the other song, the Mr. Grinch song, but also uh the fa hoo ra hoo dup, dup, la la, whatever that song
Yeah.
is. Um that one actually probably is supposed to be more iconic. I think but it was in all of them. They kept that
Hmm.
in all of them. And I kind of like that too, kind of that nod to the tradition within the tradition. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Hmm.
Like, because they were getting caught up, they really showed everybody getting super caught up in buying all of the presents and the lights and the showiness of the season. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like these are good-natured people, but they become obsessed about the worldly things. And that's ultimately like what Grinch is talking about that he doesn't like. Like he doesn't like that it's all about like you're more popular, you're going to give better presents, you're rich, you're going to give people better presents. You're like if that's what it all is, then screw you all, you know? And the concept that he takes that all away and it actually heals them. They don't even realize how
Yeah,
they
how
have
far
damaged.
they've fallen from the actual spirit of Christmas until it's
Right.
suddenly taken from them. And they're like, hey, you know what? That's
Yeah.
not the point of Christmas.
Yeah. The tradition that willed out without presents and boxes and bags was this song about how we can come together and
Hmm.
whatever. And I love that they kept that in. Put your own songs in, that's fine. The rendition on the You're a Nasty Mr. Grinch was actually I still prefer the original,
Hmm.
but I was okay with the remake in this one.
Yeah. And
It
the
was
Jim Carrey one.
fine.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was an interesting take, but I
Yeah.
definitely like it better than the 3D animated one.
Yeah, I don't know if I remember the 3D animated versions of the Mr. Grinch.
They played it at a weird time, like when they're introducing the Grinch instead of when like
Oh,
he's trying to become the Santa Claus
right,
character
you're
or
right.
planning his evil Christmas takeover. Like they had it at the beginning, and it was just kind of a weird spot for that
Yeah,
because it was like
you're right.
he hasn't done anything to seem mean yet, and you're doing the "You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch" song already. So I just thought that was just a weird place for it, and I didn't
Yeah.
like the version of it was odd.
But I like, so in Jim Carrey's version, isn't he singing it about himself?
Yes. So
He's like,
he's like
yes.
half singing it about himself, and then there's also another voice that starts singing. So it's
Yeah.
like it's kind of
But I
both.
love that. He gave himself his own theme song. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Because that was some things that he would do. And that's one of the
yeah.
things. Okay, so a couple things I want to say. One of the things that I like about the whole story of the Grinch is so for somebody that's not super social or isn't naturally gifted at social interaction, Christmas and like things like that that are about togetherness or about family and everything can be difficult. It can be hard to not feel all this pressure to be like be jolly and happy and like be the life of the party when you don't know how to do that, when that's not your natural personality. And so I get that. Like, and when your family's got issues, like many of us in the world do, and you don't always get along, there's a certain like apprehension about getting together as a family to celebrate things because you don't know who's going to say something stupid or who's going to make someone cry or who's going to, be all offended that somebody didn't like their gift or someone's going to say something stupid about someone's gift because sometimes we have butt heads in our families and like they don't always realize they're butt heads or they just don't know any better. I don't know. But when you have those kind of situations, you kind of worry about these things, and it's an anxiety just to go to a family function. Like, well, I want that togetherness. I want that ideal, happy Christmas like experience, but my family's not the normal family, you know? And I know there's lots of people that can relate to that, like me, don't always feel excited to go see their family because they're not sure what version of their siblings or their parents they're going to get. Because I'm fairly certain everybody in my family is bipolar on some degree. even myself. Um, and I say that in the most loving way possible. Um, but you never know. Like some families are predictable and they're pretty much the same all the time, but some of us, we do not have those kind of families. Sometimes they're fun and sometimes they're just jerks. And even during the holidays. So when you're somebody that has that kind of family, or you're the kind of person that doesn't know how to act in social situations, which I am both, this time of year can be quite like nerve-wracking. So I've always liked that about the Grinch story. It says I can relate to that not fitting in and feeling like the random green person in a room full of pink people or whatever. The what in the room full of who. The other thing that I like about this version of Grinch particularly is that he has kind of that sarcastic wit, and he has kind of like the it's fun to kind of mess with stuff and to be different kind of personality, which is a big thing in my family. We're all about being weird. Weird is cool, weird is good, normal is bad. We're all about, calling someone crazy in my house, amongst my children and my husband. That's a compliment as far as we're concerned. You call somebody normal, that's an insult. That is just like the rudest thing you could say to somebody in my house. So like we all find that kind of thing funny. And like some of my kids, they love that kind of weird humor where like they're kind of making you make fun of yourself with
Mhm.
self-deprecating kind of humor. So in that way, we love the Grinch. The Grinch is really funny and relatable.
Sometimes I am the normal one, but I'm like, I'm the only normal one in the room. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because like for me, it's that everyone else will have such a dynamic, like maybe you are feeling antisocial or you are feeling awkward or you are whatever, but I feel like everyone has like something to bring to the table and I appreciate all of the things you have to bring to the table, but I don't actually bring anything myself. You know what I mean? And so I kind of feel like I said, like I feel like sometimes I'm one of those like people on the periphery that got cut in the made for TV version. Like, you know,
You're the extra.
I am. I'm kind of the extra in my own life sometimes, and I feel
That's
like
it.
that's weird.
You're
But
not extra to me. You're a
thank you.
big character in my story.
But you know what I mean? Like I kind of so when he's like sitting in class and he the young him is sitting in class and he likes that girl that's the impossible like, I've been there. Hi. I think you and I both know. When I'm like, "Oh, what? The completely unattainable guy? I'm just gonna,
Of course.
sit here in the back and pretend like I ever had a chance. I
Yeah.
chose not
I'm
to
just
take
gonna
it."
obsess in my head, but like
Yeah.
totally act
And then
cool.
I also have times that I feel like Cindy Lou, where my family more or less is we're kind of normal. Like there's not a lot of like eccentrically like you were talking about like sometimes people are just buttheads and they don't understand it. They don't even see it. I
Yeah.
don't have a ton of that. Sometimes we will have like a moment of that and then we'll like someone else will be like that was rude.
And like
Oh, you're
pseudo
right. I'm
bring it back.
sorry.
Yeah.
And it's all back to normal. And even with my in-laws, I sometimes I don't feel like I fit in with my in-laws, but it isn't so much that because we're all just butting heads. I feel like I'm sometimes Cindy Lou. Like she's looking around and she's seeing everybody else just be so into
Kind
it
of
and they
bad.
all just belong. And
Hmm.
she's like, from your perspective, you assume that I belong too, but I don't feel like I belong.
Yeah.
And I have felt that so often when people are like, "Oh no, you're one of us." And I'm like, "Okay, but I don't
Am I?
feel like I'm
Yeah.
one of you?"
Yeah, like you never really know how someone's feeling and what their perspective is. Like some
Yeah.
people might feel like the Grinch, but not know how to express it. And so they may seem like they're okay, but meanwhile they're going crazy inside
Yeah.
and they need someone to reach out to them. And I think that's something I can relate to too within my religion because again, it's a very social religion. And that sometimes people just assume that you've got the big family to go celebrate Christmas with or go celebrate the holidays with. And, a lot of people do within the LDS religion have big families. But when you like move away, like we did, and you're not near family, you suddenly don't. And so then you're very alone in a very social environment. And like, you just feel like the loner.
Hmm.
And like, yeah, it's odd, but not everybody has someone to go to. So it's like, you shouldn't assume everyone has a home to go back to or has family to go visit for the holidays. And like, we shouldn't assume that everybody's okay. Like,
Yeah.
we should sort of look for the signs that somebody needs to be included more. Somebody needs to be reached out to, and sometimes we might be that person, but sometimes we need to be the person that does the reaching out.
Yeah.
Even if we need someone to reach out to us, sometimes we have to be the one to do it first,
Yeah.
which is kind of what Cindy Lou does. Is she needs somebody to sort of help her figure this out, and her way of figuring out what matters about Christmas is reaching out to someone else who doesn't like Christmas, who doesn't get Christmas, and trying to find like how she can help him. How can
Right.
she, if she can help the Grinch, then maybe she's not a lost cause. Maybe she could appreciate Christmas too.
I really appreciated that they added that dynamic because in the poem, in the original book, it is super simple. It says something about like, why was he like this? I don't know. Some people
Don't
say his
ask
shoes
why.
were too tight or whatever. But I think it's because his heart's three sizes too small or whatever, two
Yeah,
sizes too small. And
some
that's
funny
that's just
reasons.
it's simple and sweet and it gets you there. So you can keep telling the story. Like it's fine.
Hmm.
But to actually like be like you said, like see the signs. Clearly something's not okay. Why is he like that? And everyone's, oh, because that's just who he is.
Not just the
Well,
Grinch. Like no one said,
right,
"Hey, it's not okay for this kid to be up there all by himself. Why has everybody
right,
just left him up there by himself?" Yeah, I get
right.
that he's the only green person. I don't know why. Where's where does the green come from? How come nobody else is green?
Yeah, that
I
was a
don't know.
weird one
They never
too.
explain that.
I feel like they tried to like say something about it in the wind blowing him off course. Like somehow that like changed him into like a
Or maybe he was supposed to go to a different town.
right,
He went to
yeah.
the wrong town or something. The
He
other
was supposed to go to
Whoville, the
Sesame
green,
Street.
yeah. The Whatville. He was supposed to go to the Whatville where everybody's green. And he would have fit in.
Right. But yeah, like that kind of just that concept that like I didn't choose to be here. I didn't choose to.
To be different. It just
Yeah,
because we
but
really
what,
don't choose who we are. I mean, we
right.
do, we make our choices about how we're going to be and who we're going to become, but we don't choose whether we're white or black or pink or purple. We don't choose whether we're short or tall or whether we're, gorgeous or, average looking. And like, we just kind of have to figure out who we are and love that person
Yeah.
and, find the love for ourselves. Because if you can't love yourself, you can't love other people. And that's part of kind of the story too, is the
Yeah.
Grinch doesn't love himself. He
Right.
doesn't appreciate himself, so he can't appreciate anybody else. And so he like to hide his self-loathing, he directs it out to everybody else.
Yep.
Why
Yeah.
he's a bully, why he messes with people, why he's projecting his feelings.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's something that I tell my kids all the time that and I'm sure I've probably said it before. I have like a few things that I say all the time. But
yeah, I'm sure.
and I tell them to give them a little grace whenever there's like they're talking about some kid spreading rumors about them or someone that's doing some horrible thing or whatever. And sometimes you just need to deal with it. And but also you can give them a little grace. And that doesn't necessarily mean let them get away with whatever they're doing. But them on a personal level, sometimes you just need to give them a little grace. And sometimes you need to give yourself a little grace.
Mm.
And when you're watching this movie in particular, you see those kids do not give him any grace, and he
Yeah,
doesn't give himself any either. And how can he's never been given it. He has by the old biddies, but he doesn't
yeah,
it doesn't really land in the way that we would hope that it would. But the kids around him don't give him any grace. He doesn't really know how to. The one girl, what you said, Martha May,
mm-hmm.
has the opportunity to, but she's ultimately, what's the right word?
He's sort of like scared.
Yeah,
Or
like
like,
she's
she's kind of like frozen in place. Like sometimes we want to do the right thing, but like we're
Right.
so shocked in the moment that we kind of just freeze.
Right. Well, and sometimes like you don't you have that moment of like, are they worth risking my entire future on?
Yeah, your
And
whole like social stability.
right. And when they were young, she chose no. And then in the future, she's like, screw that. I'm choosing yes.
No, she
I made a
probably
mistake.
regretted it all her life. She's like, I
Right.
liked him and he didn't deserve what happened to him. And, obviously she doesn't like a normal guy.
Right.
She likes his weirdness.
Right.
And she sees how weird and strange he is. She's into it. She clearly doesn't like the mayor, which, okay, so random note, when he's doing that scene where he's going through the phone book and like telling people alphabetically that he hates them, through the phone book and he's yelling it down at Whoville. He's going through like the A's, right? And like the mayor's name is something like Augustus something something, and it's double A's, whatever. And he's going through and he's saying hate, 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 loathe entirely. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that was the mayor. That's my theory.
Cindy Lou, she does give him a little grace.
Hmm.
And he doesn't know how to take it. He doesn't know how to receive that.
It's weird.
Yeah,
He's like freaked out by it.
it takes him a good amount of time to process it. And then at the end, she like kisses his cheek and she's like, "Your cheek, it feels," and he's like, "What? Gross, stinky, smelly," or what, like he like
Yeah.
says like a bunch of like things. He's like, and she's like, "No, warm." And it's like that cute like little moment, but it's
Oh.
that same like that moment that he's like, "Oh, I can give myself a little grace." Like
Yeah, I don't
I don't
have to assume the
right.
worst.
Yeah, that again, they don't have to preach to you. They
Hmm.
just show it to you and let you get it. And if my kids didn't get it or I didn't get it the first time, that's okay. It's still there for me to get when I'm ready or whatever,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, exactly. And, I think overall it's a good movie. I appreciate it. Um, and I enjoy it more every time I watch it. My kids love it. And it's a classic for me. That's, my favorite version. I love the cartoon still. But my kids, they like, this is weird. I'm like, kid, but this is the one I grew up with. And I'm
yeah.
like, if you watch this, you can see all the stuff that this movie borrowed, the
Yeah.
little things that they referenced, like he slunk to the icebox and he goes slunk, like he said
Yes.
it, and you're like, haha. And anyways, so overall, I'm all for the Jim Carrey one. This is my favorite. I know there's some people that think it's just ridiculous or whatever. I disagree. I'm
Yep.
all for it.
I I am very happy that I was happy with it this
That
time.
you liked
Like,
it better this time. Yeah,
yeah.
it's better. It's always a pleasant surprise when you go into it with a low expectation and you're like, "Oh, that wasn't so bad." Or you watch something you didn't like and then come back and go, "I'm not so sure why I didn't like it so much." Well, you're
Yeah.
just not in the mood that day, or you're like, it's not that bad.
It's funny because with food, I'm usually willing to try something, even something that I have tried before, and I'm like, I don't know, I tried this before and I didn't like it, but I'll try it again. You know,
Mm,
with food, like people are like, oh, my kid's a picky eater. I am not picky. Like I know that there are things that I don't like, and guess what? If there's onions on it, I'm probably not gonna peel them off. But if I'm choosing, I'm not gonna put onions on it or whatever, right? Like
yeah.
I'm not picky when it comes to food, but apparently when it's movies or TV. I'm a lot pickier than I think because I'm like, oh, Jim Carrey, I don't like it. Dang it. I was wrong.
Yeah, I would say I'm the exact opposite. I'm very picky about food and not as picky about movies. My husband says I like everything. I'm like, no, I just have like a broader appreciation for different types of humor and different types of things. He has more of a narrower view of what he likes, and I can kind of pick it out whether it's going to be something he likes or he doesn't like.
I can do that too. The more I like it, the more Scott probably won't.
Yeah, yeah,
When it
it's
comes to
funny.
humor, when it comes to like the other stuff, dramas and stuff, we can usually get in line. But the more I think something is funny, the more he doesn't like it.
Yeah,
And so I
okay.
kind of want him to see this movie and be like, "Do you still think it's hilarious? Because I think it's pretty funny this time."
And you're like, maybe he won't because you do.
He'd
Like
be
it's
like,
whole
"Oh,
contrary
it's not as funny as I
thing.
remember."
Okay,
Yes.
so your feelings about the Illumination Benedict Cumberbatch version.
There are elements about it that I really, really like. Generally, of the three, I think this might be my least favorite. However, I don't dislike it.
Okay.
Um, one thing that I really liked was that they sang the traditional church, like when the choir is like chasing him down the
That is
street.
my favorite part.
But yeah, I love that. So I keep talking about how I don't want my media to preach to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't need you to be like, now listen to this. It's very important. I just want you to tell me what you're telling me, and I'll get it or I won't. Like, you know.
Yeah.
And I was kind of entertained that when they're singing that song, the God Rest You Merry Gentlemen, like they have a full-on West Side Story moment where they're
Yeah. It's like a horror story,
like
like where the
like
carolers are hunting him down. That's probably my favorite part of the entire movie right there.
yeah, it's so
Hilarious.
funny. And then later they sing at least one other, like they also have the Fahu Rahu song. I don't remember the words. I actually have sung this song before, and yet I can't remember the words, of course. But but they do have that in there. But they have another traditional Christmas carol. I don't remember which one it is now, but that is also very Christ-centered. And in that in that time when they're singing that one, like it's more of like a welcoming, like, oh, I could be part of this. Maybe he's not Christian. Maybe he's not into Christmas yet. Maybe, and yet you can still be here. You're still welcome to be part of it. You know what I mean? And I just liked that I don't know. We talked about, I mentioned before, having the tradition within the tradition. I feel like I like this. I have a friend who's Jewish, and he's like, I like the Christmas songs. I like the feeling of Merry Christmas, you know? And he's like, we do Hanukkah within my family, but also I give Christmas presents to my neighbors and put
Yeah.
something in the mailbox for the mailman. You know, he's like, I like that. I want Christians to celebrate Christ, and I want people who aren't Christian or whatever to still have the Christmas lights and he
Yeah,
does.
to
He puts
still
up Christmas lights.
celebrate
Yeah.
sure.
He's like, I'm perfectly fine with having carolers walking down the street singing, you know, Silent Night or God Rest You Merry Gentlemen or whatever it is. Like he's like,
Yeah.
I like that that's part of our life, you know?
Yeah.
And then the fact that they also sell menorahs right next to Christmas trees. And he's like, that's great. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But, you know, and
I agree.
I like that this is essentially a secular Christmas story,
Mm-hmm.
and they still included the concept that there wouldn't be Christmas without the celebration of Christ. There might
Yeah.
still be the pagan holiday, blah, 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 blah.
But
But
it would be a different kind of
right,
holiday than it is now.
what it is this huge, most of the world stops to let us celebrate
Mm-hmm.
the Christian tradition. And so the fact that they weren't preachy about it, and the one time they were, it was hilarious and they knew it. Like they were kind of winking at the audience. Sometimes we can get a little preachy and chase you down
Oh,
the
you
Gentile
better stop and listen
aisle.
to our
Like
carolers. You better. Yeah. That's
they're
pretty
like,
funny. Yeah.
you're gonna get Christmassy, fool. Like it was
You're gonna
so
have
funny.
Christmas parents whether you like it or not.
So yeah, that I found hilarious. The
Yeah.
concept that again he had a love interest or a potential love interest in the mom. Like
Yeah, that
again,
was sort of hinted like at the end, like he was gonna end up with the mom, because otherwise, why doesn't she have a dad? Unless that was just so she could have the single mom struggling on her
right.
own thing. But
Well,
it was kind of hinted at.
and the concept that like Cindy Lou is like, I want my mom to be happy. That's what she wants. For Christmas, she wants her mom to be happy. How does she make her mom happy? Grinch. Like that becomes like a major element in making mom happy.
Yeah.
And why would that be unless maybe a love interest, you know?
Maybe she needs a husband.
And they didn't have to make it like super over the top like you know, it was simple. If you wanted to read it in, it's there to read in. And if you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to read that in, then don't read it in.
He's just
Like,
a family friend.
yeah, then it doesn't hurt the story to be like, I don't see it. Okay, then you don't see it. I
Hmm.
did, doesn't matter. Like, you
They
know,
didn't
like
go full into that. Yeah. So you can
I
interpret it how you like.
yeah, I appreciate that they were like, it's here for you if you want it, and if you don't want it, you don't need it. So,
Yeah.
also, I think the neighbor is funny. If it was my real neighbor, I would be so annoyed. I would be like, buddy, move.
You're like,
But
stop already.
but for this movie, oh my gosh, the friend, the neighbor that's like, he's my best friend.
The
Like,
neighbor that thinks they're friends, and he's like, "We're not friends. What do you need to get this through your head? We're not friends." And he's completely oblivious. So it's kind of like a Ned Flanders, but not
yeah.
as weird and annoying in a different kind of a way. Like, but yeah,
Yeah.
like kind of oblivious to the fact that you don't like him.
Sometimes I think I'm that person. Like like I'll be like,
You're
"Oh,
oblivious.
my friend." And they're sitting there going, "Uh,
What?
actually."
Who are you?
Maybe that's why I think he's so funny because I'm like, "No one's that crazy." And everybody else is like, "Oh my gosh, it's Ray."
Oh no.
Possible. But yeah, so there are elements about it that I like. There are other elements about it that I don't even know if I can describe it. I don't like Cindy Lou. I don't like the Cindy Lou in this one.
Okay.
I don't, it doesn't grab me the way that the others do.
Yeah. Okay.
How about you?
Okay. So I am not. When we've already talked about this, I am not a Benedict Cumberbatch fan. We like to call him Benedict Cumberbun, but that's just because we like to mess with people's names. We have a lot of funny names for people, especially actors. Um, anyways, I'm not a big fan of him. He does a decent American accent, which is fine, but I feel like this version of the character is really confusing because, like, my kids were pointing it out this time because I somehow have raised a house full of movie critics, being two big movie people, and that we both have podcasts to talk about movies. So go figure. Our kids are critics. Anyways, we're watching this one, and like they're like, you know what? Like, if he's supposed to be such a bad guy, why does he keep having all these sensitive moments throughout the movie? He keeps having sensitive moments throughout the movie. So like they're saying that his heart's too small, but it seems like he feels everything. Like he's reacting emotionally to a lot of things throughout the movie. So he's not emotionally dead. So like it just felt like it didn't make sense. Like he had a lot of moments where he's having like emotion or he's showing that he feels things, and it's like I don't know. I kind of appreciated more the idea that the Grinch didn't understand what was wrong with him. He knew he didn't understand Christmas and then couldn't relate to other people, but he
Mhm.
didn't know why and he didn't know how to fix it. And it was kind of like this awkward, you know, realization that he came into at the end. Whereas like this Grinch is too self-aware and but at the same time not self-aware. It's really strange. So like he has too many opportunities where he responds emotionally to things and there's some things he does that are just plain just rude but not funny and other things he does that are just funny but not necessarily rude and
Yeah.
like he's very
So,
confusing. It's hard
yeah,
to really understand him.
something that my one of my kids pointed out was that so I think she might have been the only one that actually stayed with me through all three because of course I watched them one right after the other.
There's at least one kid in my house, if not two,
Yeah,
that will be there for all the
that
movies.
will stay there.
The
Yeah.
other ones will kind of disappear.
Yep, that was same with us. And she was like, so she noticed that the Jim Carrey Grinch and this one, they loved Max. The
Yes.
in the original, it doesn't necessarily he doesn't seem to like his own dog. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
why does
He
he
kind
have
of
this
me
dog?
to him in like the Jim Carrey one too, but like in more of a like I
Yeah,
love
like
you,
he
but I'm a butthead kind of a way. But
right.
yeah.
And in this one, he's like this Grinch, the Cumberbatch Grinch, I guess. Did I
Mm-hmm.
say his name right? I may not have.
Yeah, it's okay.
But the Benedict Grinch.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
But he loves this dog. He wants to be loved. Like that, like you're saying, how he seems to actually have all of these emotional yeah, because this is an emotional thing. The reason that he's so against Christmas is because he is hurt, because he's emotionally wounded. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
like he associates Christmas with being alone, with
Yeah.
not having a family. And it's when it's a holiday that's all about family togetherness and getting together and giving presents to the people you love, and you have nobody, that's
Yeah.
kind of salt in the wound.
Yeah.
And that is a good motivation. It does make sense.
Yeah. That this one more than any of the others, but also the Jim Carrey one to a decent degree. She noticed that he seems to act like there's a reason that that dog stays with him, especially in this one.
Hmm.
Um, that dog is loyal because his owner loves him. He might
Yeah,
hate the world, but he loves Max.
he loves this one animal. Yeah.
Yeah. And then later, oh, what's the reindeer's name?
I don't know. I
What does
forgot
he
what they
call
he.
him?
I don't forgot what he named him. It
Yeah, he called him something weird.
was like
But what's
Larry
the
or Gary or I don't
yeah,
know.
it was weird because it was such like a normal name.
So there's things I like about that random reindeer thing, but it's totally unnecessary
Yeah.
and doesn't really bring anything to the story other than random little comic moments.
Yeah, it's a funny thing and it shows again, it shows you the concept that he understands love and he feels like he's been rejected. You know what I mean? When
Hmm.
he sees the family and he's like, "Oh crap, you've got a wife, you've got a kid."
Why did he go with him then if he has a wife and a kid?
I don't
He
because he's
seems
a
like
big
totally
doofus.
happy to go and
Like,
be his buddy. It's like, did he forget for a second? He just not very smart reindeer or like, oh,
yeah,
anyways.
I don't really get it. And like you said, like it isn't necessary, but it does kind of lend to that concept that like this Grinch, he knows how to be a good person. He just feels like he's been rejected by everyone else. So you
Yeah.
know what? Screw you. Like
Yeah. So
you
he just protecting himself, but like people can't disappoint you if you disappoint them first. Like
right.
if you don't have expectations, then nothing will ever go wrong. But then
Yeah.
nothing will ever go good either.
And you're not going to give me a gift. You're not going to consider me. You're you're then you know what? Fine. I'm going to take all y'all's gift. You don't want me to be, you're all talking about inclusion and you're not going to include me. Fine. I'll take it all away. What do you have now?
Take your
And
Christmas, ha.
yeah, and
Yeah.
what they had now was still each other, you know?
Yeah. And he's like, oh, that I totally didn't do anything at all, did I?
Right.
Um,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. One thing that I was going to mention about the Jim Carrey version that I forgot, when his heart grows, he's
I
like, ah,
love that. I love that they show him physically react to it. Like, because that would hurt. If your
yeah,
heart actually physically, it would feel like a heart attack. And like, he's just, it's just so funny. I
yeah.
love that part. And then like the other ones, he doesn't really respond physically so much.
You can't help but appreciate, for me anyway, is that concept that like he knows how to be a good person. He knows what love is, and he feels like he was denied that. And so he was like, fine, I'm going to hurt you before you hurt me again.
Hmm.
And he expanded that to everybody. I'm going to hurt everybody because you're just going to hurt me. Like he just assumes the worst.
Yeah.
And ultimately, when he's like, oh, actually, he can give himself a little grace and
Hmm.
everybody else does too. Again, it's like that concept that I love that they stayed true to that concept.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed about this version is that nobody seems to mind the Grinch in this one. They're not they're not excluding him, he's just there. No one's reacting negatively to him being around, really. Besides, the carolers being like, hey, you didn't stop and listen to his carol. We're going to force you to. Other than those guys, like, nobody really seems to care that he's there. Not for good or for bad. Like, nobody's excluding him. Nobody besides his neighbors including him. But, like, he's not, like, rejected. So that's part of what's kind of weird about this is that he's just a part of the town. So some of this rejection that he seems to be feeling, he's doing to himself. It's self-inflicted. It's in his head. So again, that kind of speaks to, being an orphan or coming from a emotionally damaging childhood. There's a part of you that's just you're gonna do that to protect yourself. And I think that's part of what he realizes is that, hey, I'm the one that's doing this. And I think that's profound. I do. I don't know that I like that so much. It feels less of an arc. I can kind of get where they're going with that. So I guess there's qualities to both versions,
Yeah.
but it's kind of confusing for me.
But sometimes in some of the modern films and
Hmm.
even modern books, like it feels like you're not allowed to have a villain anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this version of the Grinch does kind of feel like Jim Carrey's version does it a little bit too. Where it's like, but look at him. He was so mistreated. And there is an element to that.
Yeah, but
But
he
he
was
made his
actually
choices.
mistreated.
Yeah, he still made his choices and he
True.
chose to be awful. You know what I mean? And then he
Hmm.
chose better, which again, redemption story, I'm all about that.
Yeah.
But in this version, there is a lot more, you're right. It is a lot more of it's kind of in his head.
Hmm.
He he chose to be rejected. Like he
Yeah.
chose to just assume that he was rejected. And there is that kind of person out there, and they are their own worst enemy. They are the villain of their own story. I might be the sidekick of my own story. He's
Which is sad. It's your story. You're the star. You were the star, madam. Okay?
I'm I
Lead
feel like Sucker
lady.
Punch over here, but I don't know if you ever saw Sucker Punch.
I didn't, but I heard the sucker punch of watching Sucker Punch is that you sat through the whole movie. That's a sucker punch.
It's kind of
So
true. But
that's
also the
pretty funny in
concept that
itself.
like at the very end she realizes, oh, this was never my story. This was her story.
Oh,
I feel like that sometimes.
okay.
I feel like I'm telling other people's story. But he is the villain of his own story.
Yeah.
And he has that same um broad strokes, that same concept of he has to start choosing better, but in this version, he has to start choosing better for himself, which I feel like can be true. I've got a kid that's just like that. She just assumes that people don't like her. She just
Yeah.
assumes that she's not good at stuff. She just like there was a new girl at school, and my child comes home crying because if there's a new kid at school, her friends might like the new kid more.
Oh,
And
wow.
I like initially I heard that and inside my head, my reaction was, that's ridiculous, you know? But if I say that to her, it only compounds the hurt that she's feeling.
Yeah.
And
Like
so
you're not like giving credit to her feelings. You're not
right,
understanding.
right, which is something that you kind of see here when he's like, ugh, everybody hates me. And they're all like, whatever, bro, you know?
Yeah.
And they didn't let him sit in his fear and then help him out of it until the end. They do eventually, right?
Hmm.
But he has to do a lot of that work himself. And so he still has the concept that he still has to choose better.
Yeah.
But he's not the villain that the original story made him out to be.
Yeah.
And I kind
Which
of
is
feel
good
like,
and bad. Like, I
yeah,
feel like I understand why people want to do that and they want to give like a more relatable villain, but at the same time, I feel like it also can be weak. It can also make
right,
for a weaker character if
right.
there's too much over explaining, too much like over, well, he's bad, but because of this. And like, I
Right.
get that with most bullies, it's because they're bullied themselves. It's because something happened to them. It's a manifestation. There's something about this movie, this it meanders.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't know where it's going or what's happening. There's too much Cindy Lou. Where, okay, this is
Yeah.
my thing. I felt like in the live action one, it was mostly about the Grinch. Even though Cindy Lou was now a much bigger character, she was still focused on the Grinch. So it was still about the Grinch. Whereas this one, it feels like they're both important. There's two stories going on here instead of the one story, instead of the Grinch story, it's Cindy Lou's story and the Grinch's story. And it almost feels like they dedicated too much time to Cindy Lou. And I guess
Hmm.
they're trying to give her a backstory too and give her more of a story. And they wanted to put in the whole mom character and like show like appreciation for single moms and how hard life is in general for single moms, let alone during the holidays. I get that, can respect what they're doing, but like it definitely made the movie feel muddled. Like it was all over the place, and there was all this stuff with her and her friends. And again, I didn't really care about her character. Like some of my kids liked this Cindy Lou and thought she was cute and funny and had kind of like a fun personality. To me, she just felt like not Agnes. Edith? She felt like Edith from the Despicable Me.
Yeah.
She kind of reminded me of her, but like not as funny.
Right.
And but some of my kids liked her, but I kind of felt like she was a throwaway character for me.
So that same kid, she's 12, the daughter that I'm talking about that actually
Uh-huh.
sat through all of them with me. And I saw this one last. And I think she was the only one that I know she's the only one that sat through all of them, but she might have been the only one to watch this one at all. I can't remember. But she she was like, it feels like, because I asked her, I was like, I don't like the Cindy Lou in this one. Like, I don't like it. I don't like the storyline. I don't like the character really. And she goes, it feels like they had two different stories and neither of them made a full movie. And so they just
Put them
reworked them and put
together.
them together. And I'm like, it does kind of feel like that actually.
Yeah, I can see that. That makes sense. So, so much time is spent on Cindy Lou, and it's like, okay, I guess it is ultimately part of the story because they want to make Cindy Lou and her mom important to the Grinch in the
Hmm.
end, that he becomes part of their life. I really hated this movie the first time I saw it. I really didn't like it, besides the couple things I talked about that I enjoyed. But it looks nice. It looks good. The
Yeah.
graphics are good. Like, I do appreciate some of the things they did within the story. Like, I love that whole like light place they went to, like the kids went to like
Hmm.
plan their Santa Claus attack, whatever. That was a pretty cool thing. Like,
Yeah,
if there
that
was
was.
something like that in my neighborhood or like in my town, I would go to that. That looks like the most amazing light show ever. So it was very
Yeah.
cool. And like, their giant Christmas tree, that was awesome. There's a lot of cool things they did visually that I liked. I haven't talked about it yet, and I should because this is the biggest thing I don't like. So Pharrell Williams, he does the narration. And oh my gosh, I think he should stick to singing and he shouldn't narrate. Because I feel like he's the worst possible voice for this. He's so boring. Like, sorry if he sees this, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but when you have Boris Karloff is the original narrator, and then in the Jim Carrey one, it's Anthony Hopkins, who
Hmm.
also has an amazing voice. It's very
Hmm.
expressive. It has great resonance, and like it's interesting. But Farrell does not have a narrating voice. Like, or if he does, he didn't bring it. It just felt bland and boring. And my other thing is they added a ton they wrote a whole bunch, like a whole nother poem to go in to
Yeah.
this into the original poem. And I get what they're going with, but I hated half of their lines. Hated what they added.
Yeah.
Like some of it was good, but a lot of it was horrible. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, why are we trying to rewrite Dr. Seuss when he is a genius? He's it's a classic. The other movies felt like they were like paying homage to the original, whereas this one was like they're trying to completely rewrite it.
Yeah.
And like they like some ideas about the Grinch, but they kind of picked and choose and then they threw everything else away.
Yeah.
And I hate listening to this movie. I hate. Because it's not a narrator voice. Like, I wouldn't hire that guy to narrate my audiobook or to be in my movie. Like, and he doesn't have a bad voice or anything. It just, he didn't do anything with it.
So it reminds me, his narration of this movie reminds me of last time when we were talking about the Sword in the Stone, and I
Hmm.
said at first I was listening to a woman who was just kind of reading it to you as if she was reading to a class
Hmm.
of children, you know. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's how he did this one, where he is telling you the poem. Did you catch the rhyme? And it
Yeah.
almost loses something, and then like you said, they did add a lot. There was one or two lines that I actually really liked,
Hmm.
but I felt like they weren't necessary to put it, like you don't need to add to Dr. Seuss.
Yeah.
However, they were pretty clever lines. And like, so we have a book that's called Baby Oh Baby, The Places You'll Go.
Hmm.
And they grab little bits from a whole ton of Seuss's work because he wrote the book The Places You'll Go, right?
Hmm.
And so this was a book that you're meant to read to your baby in utero. And
Oh, okay.
because they can hear the sound of your voice, and this way they're hearing the rhythm, they're hearing all these
They're
different
getting
things.
used to the sound of being read to, too.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And it is very Dr. Seuss, you know. And it grabs like a little bit from a whole bunch of his books, and it has pieces that connect them that are written by other people. I think his
That's
son or his
cool.
nephew.
I don't know this story. That sounds really cool.
It's really cool, and it basically is an introduction to Dr. Seuss and kind of to the world, just to the concept of like life is going to be so fun. There's going to be serious stuff that we have to deal with, but man, I'm so excited to get to experience this with you. Like that's like the message you're giving your baby, right?
Hmm.
And the pieces that connect a Dr. Seuss piece with the next Dr. Seuss piece is written by somebody else, and it works fine because it's its own work. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah. Hmm.
And in this movie, I feel like they were like, ah, here's this brilliant piece of work. Let's add this and let's add this and let's add this. And it almost takes away from what was originally there. And so
Yeah.
then anytime there is a line that is omitted from the original, you
Hmm.
feel like they've taken something from you, even though that wasn't necessarily the intent.
Yeah.
But it feels like, oh, hey, this is a good idea, but I bet I could do it better.
Yeah. And you're like, but we didn't come here to see your version. We came here to see Dr. Seuss.
Right.
This is like, I don't know. Again, I have said this before. I'm a big sucker for respecting the source material. As a
Hmm.
writer myself, I would hate if somebody took my books and then completely slaughtered all my characters. You know, I would think that if somebody actually appreciates the original, they would pay respect to it. Yes, they're gonna do a little of their own thing, but like
Hmm.
not to the point where it overshadows the original story.
Right.
Like it needs to respect and like amplify it, not, you know, muddle it. They're weird song choices, and there were some songs that were written for the movie, for the new one, that we
Hmm.
did not like. We did not care for their renditions. The only
Hmm.
thing that was good was the "Oh Come Ye Merry Gentlemen." That was probably the best song in the whole thing. Um, so yeah, like I would say it. I don't like the remake. I get what they're trying to do. I just don't think they accomplished it exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not like the worst thing in the universe, but it's also, I don't know, it wasn't necessary. We didn't need to make
Yeah.
it.
To
So
me,
that's my opinion.
to me, it's the onion. It's the if I'm choosing, I'm not gonna choose it. But if my kids are watching it, I'm not gonna turn it off. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah. There are worse things you could watch.
yeah, if that's what we're watching, fine. But also, if I'm choosing, I don't think I will ever choose this one again.
Yeah.
So that's where I am.
I get it. I agree. So that's how the Grinch Stole Christmas. It's your turn to pick. What are we going to be reading slash watching next time?
So, in my heart of hearts, I would never jump out of sequence. hate doing that. I feel
Okay.
like you should read the first book first. But in
Okay.
this case, we're not going to do that
Oh,
because I want to do The Lion, the Witch, and the
I
Wardrobe.
knew you were gonna say that. How did I know? I knew. Okay. Sorry.
But so the other one that I kind of wanted to do, I might save it for later, but I want to do The Giver, which is also not the first in the series that it's part of.
Oh.
But but yeah, so Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, because it is the most iconic of the Chronicles of Narnia,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like
Probably
well,
the best
most
movie.
it has the most adaptations. Also, of the more commonly known ones, it's got the best one. So,
Okay. All right. I'm gonna have to go and find. Why don't you tell me what versions you're watching and then get back to
so
me?
yeah, I was gonna say I know that there's at least uh there's three that I would like to watch if I can find them all. There's at least two because there's a live action and there's a the animated
Mm-hmm.
one. So at least those two, I will watch more if I can find them.
Let's wrap this up. So for Paperback Flicks, I'm Ruth Craddock,
I'm Rae Davidson.
and we will see you guys next time for Lion Witch in the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Bye, guys.